Fabulous. Thanks to Beth, who wrangles all of our brown bag lunches. My name's James. I'm with CANA's network support team, along with Beth and Brooke, who are on the call today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country that I live and work on, the Awabakal people. Pay my respects to their elders, past and present. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land, right around the country, wherever we are. And great to see some of our organisations moving strongly in solidarity with our brothers and sisters. Elyse is joining us today from Boomerang Country to talk about a terrific campaign that we're really excited to hear about. Elyse is with Friends of the Earth, the Sustainable Cities Collective. I might put into the chat just a little more about Elyse's impressive bio and CV and her leadership role with Friends of the Earth, which has been running a really solid public transport campaign for what we'll hear about today. I was just sharing, Elyse, with my colleagues and the network support team, how you've taken a big issue that's an environmental and climate issue, but equally it's a social justice and equity problem for large parts of Melbourne, and you've worked so closely in solidarity with the impacted communities. You've boiled down that massive big problem into bite-sized pieces, and you've got some demonstrable wins already. So it's really a campaign I think all of us can learn from, and I look forward to hearing all about it today. And we're in your capable hands.
Great, thank you so much, James. Thanks everyone for having me and allowing me to come on board and present this brown bag lunch today. Yeah, I definitely do form bonds with people in the community. That's where I am today. I'm at my friend Sayeda's house out in Mount Atkinson. I have a map when I'll start my presentation so I can give you some nice visuals of where I am today and the campaign. So if I'll just share my screen. So sorry, just a moment. All right, so you can just see the Aboriginal flag right now, is that right?
Yep.
And then can you now see sort of still just the flag, or is there other stuff?
Other stuff.
Along with the text to the left. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just do that. All right. Let me just try. Now, can you see just the flag, or is there other stuff?
There's other stuff too. You'd have to select presenter view if you go back.
Okay, sorry about this. Share. Presenter view.
Maybe present full screen. Yeah, present full screen.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I just won't have my notes up at the same time, but that's okay. Yeah, just before I get into things, I just want to acknowledge the land that I'm joining from today, which is Boomerang land. And the area that I'm at is a small sort of new estate called Mount Atkinson, which is quite close to the border of Wurundjeri country as well. So yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the true owners of this land. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And that's just a bit of a visual for where I am. So I'm sort of on the border around here, but a lot of the work that I do takes place on Wadawurrung land and Wurundjeri land as well. So that's meant to have a bit of a background, I apologize. But yeah, I guess a bit of a background about me. So as James said, I'm Elyse Cunningham. I'm the Sustainable Cities Community Organiser and Collective Coordinator at Friends of the Earth Melbourne. We've been running our Better Buses campaign since 2021, early 2021, and I have been.
We still can't see your presentation, so maybe just if you can hit got it and then go back for me.
Oh, apologies. I thought you could see it, so I'm not sure what's happening.
So just hit share, present.
Yeah.
And then present full screen. And then hopefully that not present. No, present. Yep.
So you can see.
That's much better.
Sorry about that. I thought it looked to me like it was sharing. So
no, you're all good.
Yeah, that's the map I was referring to. And yeah, this was my opening slide. So yeah, I guess I joined the Sustainable Cities Collective in the middle of last year. So it was at a time where the Better Buses campaign had had a little bit of a pause after a few months sort of between campaigners, and it being an election year in Victoria just sort of hit the ground running with everything. I guess what really draws me to Friends of the Earth and to this kind of work in general is growing up in the Blue Mountains, New South Wales. I have always been sort of surrounded by our beautiful bushland up on Darug and Gundungurra country. Something I've seen, increasingly throughout my life is bushfires and other sort of natural disasters that affect my home and other people's homes as well. So for the last year, I've been doing this organizing work and really directing my energy towards climate change issues. But also, I think you can't really have climate justice without social equity and social justice as well. And that's something that, as James said, this campaign really encapsulates. And I think it's probably more going to be the focus of this presentation rather than the environmental justice stuff. So where I was just before, where I thought I'd be joining you from today, is this little playground here called Grizzly Bear Park Playground. It's called that because there's a big wooden figurine of a grizzly bear. It's very cute. As you can see, it's a little bit sort of far out here in the outer west. And I just wanted to, I'm in a new estate where I'm meeting today with a woman called Sayeda, who I met at a transport forum out in Melton, and we just got chatting, and she was telling me about how where she lives, there's just no bus at all. There's very small roads, and like I'm here today, and as I was looking around, I've noticed there's no pharmacy, there's no even just like a shopping center. So that the lack of sort of services coupled with the lack of public transport, you can imagine how much that sort of affects people's access to all sorts of things and really leaves people dependent on their cars. And at the time when I was talking to Sayeda, who you see on the screen now, she was saying that for her, because she didn't drive, she actually does now, which is good for her. She was just totally dependent on her husband or friends to drive her around, or like in this article here, she would have to pay $24 or more to get to the nearest train station, just to get around the community. And in areas in the outer suburbs where there's a lot of sort of families on lower incomes anyway, you can really see how this just lack of access to basic public transport really exacerbates inequity. So it's something that can be, fixed really quickly and really easily. It's quite simple to do, and it can really alleviate a whole host of issues that the community are facing. And yeah, this is just a bit of a map. So this is from 2021, that it sort of shows the accessibility and usability of public transport in any given area. So you can see sort of in these, can you see the little blue dot as I move it around the screen as well?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, cool. So you can see sort of the outer areas, it gets sort of darker. There's a lot of places where it's urbanized areas without minimum service. And if you know anything about the western suburbs of Melbourne, out here is all, the population is growing massively. So just this area down here, Wyndham, is now sort of bigger than Geelong. You know, there's like 12 kids born every day in Wyndham. So having access to public transport is really, really important. But at this stage, the infrastructure is just not there to match. And where I am is this tiny little dot here. Just for reference, just to give you a bit of context. So a bit of background into the Sustainable Cities campaign, the Better Buses campaign. So it started in 2021, and that was the same year that Victoria's bus plan came out. That was released around the middle of the year and sort of provides a bit of a framework for what the state government plans to do to fix the bus network, with some very sort of overarching frameworks for things that need to get done and there's sort of future plans, but there's no clear-cut timelines, no clear-cut goals, no real commitments around funding. And so what we want to see, and in the context of how much this issue is affecting folks now, is some clear-cut dates, some, you know, commitments to fund this and to do this really as soon as possible. And also to, I guess, change the way that the government has been thinking about bus reform, which I'll speak a little bit about in the next slide. So over the last couple of years, we've been working with researchers at the University of Melbourne. So Dr. John Stone, who is a transport planner, along with other researchers, released these two papers last year: Better Buses for Melbourne's West and Melbourne Zero Emission Bus Transition, that detail sort of what it might look like they focused on the western suburbs, detailing what it might look like to transform the bus network completely from these long sort of convoluted lines that you see in the map on the left to a simple grid network that you see on the right, where there is a fast, frequent and connected network of electric buses. So they mapped out on this map, you can sort of see it shows how many people are sort of able to reach any sort of given, I guess, city center sort of thing in a 30-minute travel time. And as you can see in the map on the left, all these little dots down here show that it's, you know, mostly between 0 to 69k residents. It's not a very large amount of people that are able to get around their community very quickly. But with this new map, as you can see on the right, I think it was in Williamstown, it increased just on weekdays by nearly 20%. And in Hoppers Crossing, the increase was, I think it's 1,118% or some kind of, it was a massive statistic of just how many more people would be able to access activity centres in their communities if they just swapped. And this is using existing resources as well. So yeah, I guess whenever I've explained this concept to people, whenever we're sort of speaking about, you know, what could be done with the bus network, the most common comment is that this is just common sense. You know, like why do we not already have this? Why are we still continuing to run big, heavy, loud, fuel guzzling diesel buses along these long convoluted lines when we could simply just switch where they're running, start upgrading to electric buses, and it would solve so many problems. And this is where I'll chat about the sort of challenges and limitations. So one of the challenges is that the government and the Department of Transport are sort of stuck in their ways a little bit when it comes to bus planning, and have been taking this incremental approach to network reform. So just changing a few routes at a time, or adding, you know, 12 new electric buses here and there, which is just, I guess, one of the biggest reasons why that isn't super effective is that there is a challenge of the way people view buses down here in Melbourne and the sort of reputation that the network has. If it's not some sort of big, bold, transformative change, people just aren't really going to notice it as much, and probably aren't as likely to actually change their behaviour and start using buses. Another sort of challenge is that it will require a big capital investment to do a big bold change like this, to prepare the roads, to shift and create just bus only lanes, and also to switch out the bus fleet to electric buses run on renewable energy, and also to build all the charging infrastructure. Another challenge is the service gaps and local access. So currently in Victoria, the standard is that every home needs to be within 400 metres of a bus stop. And with the new sort of map, it would mean that bus stops are a bit further away for some folks. So existing bus users might not be, it might present a bit of a barrier there, but yeah, there's opportunities as well. So when it comes to cost, it does cost a lot less than building new roads, and then the effect is so much more sustainable, so much more long lasting. Another opportunity when it comes to planning is that there's a fresh new team of bus planners within the department who want this to happen. And so we know that there is support sort of on the inside. We just need to keep pushing for this change from the outside. And when it comes to, I guess, the service gaps, we know that there are on-demand services that can fill these gaps, and we've been working with folks in the community who are working on this. And that's really important when it comes to meeting accessibility needs. But this is just a short-term solution, and we will continue to work in solidarity with disability advocacy groups that are pushing to upgrade the entire public transport network and make sure that it meets accessibility needs in the hopefully not too distant future. So where do Friends of the Earth come into the picture? What have we been doing? What is our sort of role in, I guess, this whole campaign? And I guess taking the approach that we take, which is running a community-led campaign focused on community organising and working with folks on the ground, is something that Friends of the Earth can do really well. And we have a lot of resources and knowledge in this area that we can bring to the table. So I'll tell you a bit about sort of some of the work that has been done since I joined the campaign. Over the past year. So community storytelling. As I said, this is sort of a community-led campaign, and we think that the community members are sort of the key stakeholder in any bus campaign and any bus reform sort of project. This fellow you see in the top middle here, Iqbal, has kind of become a little bit of the poster child of the Better Buses campaign. Done a lot of work with him, and he lives out in Hoppers Crossing in Tarneet on Wadawurrung land, and I'll speak a little bit about sort of his experience later on when I'm catching you up about one of the forums. But this young lady here on the top left is Zunaira. So she's actually one of Iqbal's students, and she has been, since year 7, having to go and wait at the library every day after high school until about 6 p.m. so one of her parents can pick her up, because the bus services out there just aren't existent. She can't get home otherwise. So you can see it's just a big sort of waste of time for her, where she could otherwise be working or spending time with friends. Graham in the bottom middle here lives out in Canley in the Brimbank area, and him and a group of sort of local residents are concerned about a new housing development that's going in that has no public transport provisions or provisions for adequate community services in general. So they're worried about how that will affect the folks that are going to be living there. So these are just a few of the conversations that I've been having with these folks. And one of the really great things that we've been able to do in this campaign is invest in telling the stories of these folks and connecting their issues with the wider community, so that people can see sort of the day-to-day effects that the broken bus network is having on folks. We were able to take these gorgeous photos with a group called Organise Us, and we worked with the PTOA on this as well. And aside from these amazing photos, we also have a little video, which I'd like to show you. Hopefully it will work with the sound and everything. Can you hear it?
We can't hear it, but there's captions.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that is the sort of advocacy video that we've been able to put together and share around in the media and share at our community forums and things like that. And yeah, that's something that we, again, really hope to do more of this year, is that sort of storytelling really on the ground, getting out and yeah, connecting with the community in that way. Another sort of part of the work has been connecting those folks in the community with various media, or sharing our story in the media in general. And I think this is a big sort of part of the work of community organizing that can go, it's a bit invisible sometimes. It can go a bit unnoticed because it's all about sort of going out, building up relationships with the community, and then connecting them with journalists if they reach out to us about a certain issue. And there were so many amazing opportunities to do this in the last year, because buses really just came onto the agenda, and there was journalists from all different newspapers and all different areas that wanted to know more about this story and to share it with the wider community. So buses has really come onto the agenda, and there's been a lot of sort of momentum built up for some big change that we're hoping to see this year. Another part of the work has been solidarity with our allies. As I mentioned before, access for folks living with disabilities is just not up to par down here in Victoria, or I believe sort of anywhere. Only 15% of the tram network in Vic is fully accessible for folks. And there's also the issue of the sort of 20-year public transport accessibility target that was not met last year. So there's actually a few court cases now with VCAT about where these folks at DRC have taken the government to court over their lack of their lack of ability to sort of make the transport network more accessible. So yeah, we'll continue to work with those folks as well, and bring them along to speak at our forums and share their stories wherever we can. Another part of the work on the ground is really just getting out in the community and flyering and sharing information with folks. So we did this at various sort of markets and events around the West, or even just down at the street at bus stops. A really important part of this work has been the translation. There's such a diverse array of languages spoken out here in the West. So to make sure that this information and our campaign in general is accessible to the entire community, we had our flyers translated, and that's something that we want to continue to integrate into our campaign, as well as translating information, so that we are really communicating with those who live out here in their way. And the pre-election community forums. So yeah, as a lot of you may know, last year was a state election year for Victoria. So and that was the end of November. So it was very, very busy the last sort of 6 months of the year. We held 4 community forums across the West. So one in Brimbank, one in Wyndham, one in Spotswood in Hobsons Bay, and then we had another one online. They were all really amazing. We had really brilliant speakers from the community, and also academics and transport experts come along to all of them. We also invited candidates for the election to come along and sort of tell us what they were planning to do around buses, just to sort of really build that political pressure. And I guess we set a bit of an ambitious target of maybe getting the government to do everything that we wanted by the state election, which, you know, that didn't completely happen, but we had some other really incredible achievements. And I'll tell you a bit more, I'll just tell you about one of the forums, because we don't have time to sort of go through all of them. But the Wyndham Forum was our first one at the Tarneit Community Learning Centre. So that's out on Wadawurrung land. And before I delve into it, I just wanted to flag that yesterday, the 21st of February, was International Mother Language Day. And out the front of Tarneit Community Learning Centre, you can see a big mural that was done last year for a project called the Mother Tongue Project, which was led by Gunditj Mara artist Dr. Vicky Cousins, and a big group of artists from all different sort of cultural and language backgrounds, where they built this amazing mural right out the front. So if you're ever out in that area, do go check it out, and you can look it up online and read a bit more about International Mother Language Day and what it's all about. I know about it through Iqbal, who you saw before, who I've been connecting with in the campaign. And there'll be an event there actually on Saturday for International Mother Language Day. So if anyone's in the area, please head along. They're going to have a bunch of different sort of cultural events and performances, and it will be really amazing. Anyway, so the forum, what was it like? Well, we had a big variety of community speakers. So we had Tricia Maloney, who's an accessibility advocate from the Victorian Department of Transport. Iqbal Hussain, who's a Hoppers Crossing resident, secondary school teacher, and member of the Victorian Bangladeshi Community Foundation. Senthil Sundaram from Point Cook Action Group and Windbus. Councillor Peter Maynard, who is the former mayor of Wyndham, and then Dr. John Stone from Melbourne Uni. So yeah, Peter spoke a lot about, I guess, the growing sort of size of Wyndham, and mentioned that the population is expected to get up to 500,000 by 2040, which is just quite sort of astounding. Iqbal was talking about how there is a bus stop sort of right at the front of his house, but it takes twice as long or more to get from that bus stop even just down to the shops, because of how winding and convoluted the line is. He also was talking about, because he's a secondary school teacher, he's seen his students come facing a lot of issues where they'll either be late to school because of an issue with the bus, or he's seen kids lose jobs before because they wanted to take the bus to work after school or on the weekend, and it's just so unreliable because there's areas out here where it comes every 40 to 50 minutes or so, and there's a lot of spots where it's the only option. So yeah, it just sort of really highlights how, you know, it's not the same case for everyone, but there's such a like spectrum, I guess, of experience out here that people, you know, different people are facing when it comes to the buses. Tricia Maloney was talking about sort of, you know, she said that nothing about us without us, and how we really need to make sure that folks experiencing disability are a part of this conversation, and that accessibility needs are constantly you know, at the forefront of public transport campaigns and conversations. These are just some photos of some of the folks who came along. Yeah. So that was, yeah, a really sort of beautiful event, and the other events were quite sort of similar to this one. Oh, and there's a big picture of all of us. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll talk a little bit now about, I guess, a couple of the outcomes of the work. So as I mentioned earlier, buses have become sort of more and more on the agenda. Towards the end of last year, Infrastructure Victoria released this discussion paper, Get on Board, all about Victoria's bus network, and a lot of the kind of messages in there really align with what we've been asking for in the Better Buses campaign. A lot of different orgs and councils have been talking about the issue of buses, and there is just so much momentum, as I said, sort of building around here to see some real change happen. Another outcome, which is the most important to me, I think, is the forming of alliances with community groups and individuals in the West to build power and advocate for their own public and active transport needs. So the Western Transport Alliance is a newly formed group that where it's in its early stages, and we're really just working on, I guess, fostering that group at the moment and supporting them to advocate for their own sort of transport needs. So if anyone knows any sort of transport groups in the West that might like to get involved with that, please do get in touch, because yeah, that's something that we really want to grow so that folks out West are able to kind of lead this work, and yeah, you know, they have that local knowledge, they know best about what it is that they need and what is going to be best for the community. And of course, Transport Equity Day is another big part of the work that will be taking place in 2023. So probably around September, we'll be holding a big day of action for transport groups and campaigners that are, you know, on a national scale, to sort of look at transport equity and emphasize that. I guess in the US, it's as sort of a civil right. So that's sort of where we got the idea, was from the Labour Network for Sustainability and the Amalgamated Transit Workers Union. Through this day, it was their 6th year this year on February 4, which is Rosa Parks' birthday. And yeah, it's really just to assert that transit equity is a civil right. So they invite groups from all across the states to hold events, and then they share them all, like they register them onto a common page, and then all the actions take place on the same day, and that gets shared across the media. And then they live stream it as well onto their own sort of YouTube channel. Some examples of events that were held in 2022 were the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly transit stop photo contest. So people just sent in pictures of, I guess, transit stops that were either very beautiful or very hideous. So I think we'd see a very interesting array of pictures come in if we were to do one of those around the country here. There was an awareness and education march. There was a few sort of marches and rallies and things like that from other groups. And then I really like this one as well, which was by Best Friends of Low Country Transit. where they held a breakfast and they all ate pancakes that were made from a recipe of Rosa Parks herself. And I think in that one they were sort of celebrating transit workers. So yeah, I invite any groups here to participate in Transport Equity Day in September this year. I think it's going to be a really great way for us to just sort of get transit equity on the agenda and really put that at the forefront of this message, because as I said, you can't have that environmental justice without the sort of social justice and social equity as well. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So if you want to get involved, you can get involved in Transport Equity Day sort of planning, share the event amongst your local groups and connect us all together, or you can join FO and volunteer with Sustainable Cities. Cool, I'll stop sharing now and then I guess we can move on to questions.
Thank you so much, Elyse.
No
Inspiring
worries.
stuff. Love all the visuals. What a great video. So, you know, powerfully framed, beautifully produced, really polished.
Yeah, sorry that the sound didn't work because it has a really nice song playing in the background, but I'll share it around so that everyone can watch it in their own time as well.
I have got a bunch of questions, but I'm going to hold mine. There's a couple that have shown up in the chat. Stephen, would you like to ask yours? You're asking about connection with bus companies, yeah?
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, over the years, we've done a lot of work with the Bus Industry Confederation. They've been very active, you know, in policy work federally. And they have membership, huge membership of all the companies that would provide services in your area. Have you done that? And if so, how's it gone? What are the issues with the sector itself?
That hasn't really been a focus of my work so far. I think, yeah, that sort of happens in other ways and at different levels, but our kind of key focus is mostly on that, working with the community and telling stories sort of in that way. So yeah, I guess we haven't really approached things from that angle yet.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Elyse. Are there questions from folks? Otherwise, I'm going to fire a few in myself.
Sorry, just a quick question. What day were you saying was the Transport Equity Day? Was that in September?
Yeah, we don't have an exact date yet, but it could be 23rd of September.
Okay, perfect. I'm just seeing stuff for 4th of February online, so I'm not too sure, but I'll have a little look maybe on the website.
Yeah, so 4th of February is the chosen day for Transit Equity Day, which is the day that they have in the US, which falls on Rosa Parks' birthday. And then Transport Equity Day will be sort of the Aussie version of that day. So we'll have a different date for our one.
Oh, perfect. Cool. Thank you so much for clarifying.
No worries.
With lots of advance notice for everybody to get their activities planned and promoted and so on. Elyse, you and I need to talk a little about that. I noticed that World Car Free Day, which will be on many people's radars, is 22nd September. The question of whether we avoid that a tiny bit. But let's take that offline.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I love the constructive nature of the Equity Day as well, as distinct from an anti, you know, of the World Car Free Day. I wanted to ask a question about the sort of jurisdictional question, you know, which level of government is likely to give us the solutions that you're looking for. You mentioned that your forums have been focused on the state election and getting some action from state parliament. But just wonder, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, given that you know, states deliver so much of the transport services with a very finite budget, you know, and do we need a quantum leap in the budgets that they're playing with as well?
From the sort of federal level, is that what you're asking?
Perhaps both federal and state. Just curious, what sort of responses, for instance, were you getting from some of those state MPs who didn't give you everything that you were wanting?
Well, a lot of a lot of the response we got from state MPs last year was to talk to them after the election. So they were all very busy. So they were saying, talk to us next year, talk to us after the election. So that's why I'm out here in Mount Atkinson today at Sayeda's house, because when we hang up on this, her and I are going to be going to meet with some of the staff of her local MP to talk about. I think there's a few other folks as well coming from this area. So we're all going to go together, talk to that local MP, really paint a picture of what these folks have been experiencing out here, and put the pressure on that MP to then go back to Labor and say, look, this is what people are experiencing. This is a change that needs to happen, and sort of, put that pressure internally. We really need them to sort of believe in the campaign and really understand what the community is facing. So doing things like this and bringing folks like Sayeda along. Did you want to say hi, Sayeda? She's right here. You may as well say hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Sayeda. Oh, sorry, I'll take the earphones out.
Great to hear
Yeah, you
that
can hear
you're
what
off to
other
meet
people
your
say.
MP. Good luck with your meeting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really need that. I hope they can listen. I hope they are listening, but hope they can do anything for us. Yeah, I really need that. Yeah, so many things. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just waiting for someone. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, that was largely the response, was sort of chat to us after. So that's, I guess what we are doing. But there was general sort of support. I suppose a lot of people were a lot of them were kind of on board and expressed that, this is a good idea. We know that Ben Carroll, who's the Minister for Public Transport, who I guess has been our primary target, is supportive of the idea in general. He understands the concept of the grid network and all of those things. But so our work now is to really just, demonstrate that support from the community, and talk to the community about the campaign to try to really push it over the line. I think this is something that I think could work at the federal level, but the work probably does need to come from both directions. So it could come from that kind of top down federal space, but to be able to really connect with stories like Sayeda's and folks on the ground, I guess the focus needs to really go from the local to the national. Can happen in so many different places.
There was a slide that you showed, Elyse, that appeared to be demonstrating that by not so much tweaking, but really getting amongst the weeds of the design of the system, you can get some significant improvements in the service delivery and people's access to public transport, working with the resources that you currently have. So we can all imagine then, if you double those resources or quadruple them, just how much, but it's probably both things, right? The detail and the big picture. Yeah, and it's really, in terms of how much it would cost, it's like a fraction. They can get that clean slate network happening for just a fraction of the cost of what they're going to spend on any major road. I think if they were to do the full sort of transformation and prepare the roads and switch out the whole fleet and get all of that infrastructure in place, I think the estimated cost from the Better Buses paper was about 5 billion, which is half of what they're going to spend on, or half or even less than what they're going to be spending on something like the Northeast Link Road. And the effects of it are so much more long lasting. And I guess, that there's definitely other types of public transport needed out here as well, other than just buses. And it would be beautiful to see in the future a lot more train and tram infrastructure. And I know that folks out here want that. But buses can happen in a couple of years, they can really put in some significant groundwork in this term of government to create some really long lasting and transformative change for the community. We have time for maybe another question if someone's got one.
Yeah, if I can, I think this is a great campaign, and definitely recommend talking to the federal MPs as well, and reminding people that they're elected representatives, so that you elect them to represent you. Elyse, I'm just wondering, are you also looking at how people actually get to the bus stops? Because that's what we've found, and people around the world. You can have a bus, but if you can't actually get to the bus, to and from the bus, or if it's too dangerous waiting at the side of the road, that's a really big issue. And the equity comes into it too, particularly for people with mobility issues. So I'm just wondering, are you including that as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, so what we're kind of looking at is the sort of bigger picture kind of idea for how the bus network should run. But I absolutely sort of, when it does sort of come out to play, when the funding has been announced, and when this plan actually is put into place, that's when that kind of deep consultation with the community is going to be needed. And that's, definitely part of what we're asking for as well, is that the network really does, and that the government really puts in a concerted effort to engage with the community, and trust that local knowledge and respect that local knowledge to make sure that.
So, I was just going to say, it's sort of chicken and egg, because, and one of the things, in terms of freeing up some money or getting some money reallocated is, and this links in with things like, slow shared streets, 30 kilometre an hour as the default speed limit. If you've got slow shared streets that are designed for people to travel at no more than 30 kilometres an hour, then councils, state governments don't have to have a separate bucket of money building and trying to maintain paths and crossings and so on, and they can actually then just allocate that on the roads that they've designated where they're high speed. So it can free up quite a bit of money.
Elyse, if I could add to what I'm hearing Jill say, maybe this will be our last question given the time. Whether in all those conversations that I'm imagining you having and just think are so vital, and wouldn't it be great if more of our member groups were out there in the community in the ways that you are, so good for you for that work. Whether the other modes of transport come up, whether a conversation about buses quickly surfaces frustrations or obstacles or ideas around cycling, walking, transport in a more integrated way. And what happens with that, given that your campaign is focused on buses?
Yeah, definitely it comes up. And I think one of the things that comes up is the need for more sort of integrated transport across like active and public transport in all different sort of modes. That's sort of something that doesn't seem to be it's not the way that things have been done down here in Vic. There's no real integration across the different kind of modes of transport. I think there's also really simple and tangible things that could change in the bus network that would make that integration more possible. So I think, Jill, you've mentioned this to me before as well, like bike racks on buses and things like that are just like quite simple, but they really open up options for people a lot more. And I guess, it comes down to, that overall sort of planning and the fact that cars are really at the forefront of our planning at the moment. So we need to kind of shift that way of thinking and get cars a bit off the agenda and focus a bit more on other kinds of transport.
Elyse, inspiring work. I hope you'll continue to keep us updated and let us know how we can support and promote and, even just to tell the story about the great work that you're doing out there. Really admire that project so much. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you everybody for joining us today and a great conversation. Thanks to my colleague Beth for wrangling the BBLs. Have a great day out there and all the best with your meeting with CEDA and the MP.
Thank you.